Hey Internet, my name's Gunter, and today I'm going to get you everything you need to get started painting miniatures. Okay, just a reminder that this video is for people that are just starting out, and it's going to preclude jargon and steps, and really just be about taking those first leaps into miniature painting. So the first thing that you're going to need here is you're going to need a miniature that you want to paint, and I recommend while you're learning to paint that you don't paint your exclusive, expensive, one-of-a-kind, don't paint your favorite miniatures at first if you're just starting. Go to the dollar store, or the local Goodwill, or pick up a bucket of little farm animals or dragons or whatever you think. This whole thing is you don't have to spend a lot. You will need a brush, but here I'll be using, I think I spent $1 on a pack of 10 at the Dollar Tree or Walmart or something. So you can get cheap brushes, and then you'll need a couple of paints. And I recommend, if you're not wanting or able to do a whole set, and actually the whole set, if you don't use all the colors all the time, can be a waste, but I recommend you pick out a brown, silver, 2 colors, and then black and white. So here I've got my brown, my silver, green, orange, and then the black and white will be a total of 6. And then what you can do is right here on the tops, the first thing you want to paint is actually the tops of your, this is a extra thing. One, it'll get you moving the paintbrush, but also future you, if you start to accrue paints and start to fill drawers with art stuff, if your hobby takes you in that direction, you'll still be able to identify what is where by the tops of your paints, assuming that you have a stage between just starting and I have a paint display that is a hobby investment. So, alright, so you've got, so I did that in the brown there, I covered the top of it. And since recording this video, I have actually gone through and done the rest of those 6 colors with their tops. So if you see future parts of this video, they will all be colored. So for actually painting, you're going to want to start from the bottom outward, so the lowest recesses, which for a lot of miniatures is the exposed skin or body. I'm going to pick a miniature here where I'm going to do flesh colors that aren't flesh color, with the idea that mixing and making and getting colors for flesh will be a more advanced process that'll probably get its own video later. But really just right now, put one single drop of paint on a piece of paper. We don't need a palette yet or anything like that. And I am just going to slather this green on his shield because it's where you can see it. And right now at the beginning stages, you're just getting used to how the brush feels, what the paint looks like when it lands, and in a future video we'll talk about every art person that does miniatures is going to tell you that you have to water down your paints, and I'm telling you not to yet. And that just has to do with the fact that there is such a variety of how paints will behave, that the paint that you have, seeing what it does right out of the bottle, is the best starting place, especially if you have purchased these miniature paints, which you don't have to. You can start with craft paints, but essentially you want to just see how they apply. And the white paper will give you a good kind of starting point. And the one drop at a time is basically, you can add water, but you can't remove water as easily from paint. So starting with how it comes out of the jar, just put the brush in the paint, put the paint on the surface, and see what happens when you use the different ways you can hold the brush. If you want to avoid getting paint on your fingers, here's an optional thing you can do. You just get a pop top and a little two-sided tape, and then you'll have a super professional paint holder that will keep your fingers clean. Okay, so I'm going to do some orange next. So really, you've got a singular drop there, but if you get too much paint, spend this time painting the paper. And I know that sounds strange, but if you find that your drop was more than you needed and you have extra, use that, if it's going to be wasted anyway, to practice painting different shapes and different pressures on the brush, different parts of the brush and shapes. Now, using the brush in different ways, that'll be another video, and I know I keep saying that there'll be a ton of videos, but that's because there probably will be. But for right now, you just want to put paint on plastic, see what it does, see what it looks like in the recesses and on the raised parts, and how, practice bringing the brush close to where two corners meet in the plastic. But there isn't really a right answer. You're not worried about going over the lines or the paint being too thick or too thin at this stage. It's really just about doing these coatings. And so that's why I recommend you pick up a bucket of just the cheapest toys or miniatures. Doesn't matter if they're already painted, paint over the top, just to see how the paint and the brush feel and start getting used to that, because you can memorize techniques all day long, but eventually you actually just mostly need to get the muscle memory of what your hand and brush is doing and what effects that creates when you use the brush and paint in different ways. So right now I'm doing orange essentially just all over his body here, and so this is another thing with your paints that you'll see by doing more than one color at a time, is which paints dry really fast, and you can do them in sequence, which paints run or bleed, which you can use on purpose later for more advanced techniques like layering and things like that, blending, and all those will come later. You don't need those when you're just starting out. When you're just starting out, you want to probably just crank out 10, 12 miniatures or toys. I have a 5-year-old, so I'm lucky I have buckets of little farm animals and things around. And I'm also lucky that he loves painting, and so he'll jump right in and do that with me as well. But I should have mentioned you also will need a glass of water, a little, preferably plastic glass or bowl that you can rinse your brush out in. And that's the other reason to start with just the cheapest brush you can find. Is more advanced techniques will teach you about brush care and preservation and restoration of the brushes, and we don't need any of that when we're starting out. So your bristles will break and your brush will fray, and all of that's okay. That's why we're doing a bunch of really cheap brushes at the beginning. So here I've got some extra orange, and I'm just seeing what happens when I do different things with the brush. So the top thing there, I saw how long of a stroke life there was. It drew a whole line plus another half line before it faded out. And there's a little stippling, and I did some hashes, and here I'll do some stirs. And what this is doing is it's just teaching me and showing me how my brush is going to behave if I use it in different ways. So you can experiment that on your own even before we get our video out. So after I've seen what the paints do on the surfaces, then I want to see what a little bit of water does to the paint. So essentially I'm just going to have one side of this be solid paint from the jar, and the other side be more or less solid water, and just see how those watered down versions of the paint stick, because a lot of the more advanced techniques rely on the thinness of the coat and things like that. But really just you want to see here that the body where I had the thick paint is bright orange, and it only needed one layer, but it's blotchy and you know, it doesn't hold a lot of the details. It'll fill in some of the details if it's too thick. But I'm just seeing how that contrasts with the watered down orange on the head, which doesn't make it as orange. It makes it a little bit more yellow because it's more transparent. But it also keeps the details in the plastic a lot better. So now I can kind of experiment on my own and see where that'll fall. So that is the first section of this series. And so try it out. Get some cheap brushes, get some cheap paint, get a piece of paper, and get some cheap toy or, you know, miniatures that you'll either be okay repainting later, or it doesn't matter if you have a yellow chicken or something like that. So we'll see you guys next time, and on the next installment of this paint instruction series, we'll probably go over the different kinds of brush strokes and also how to use the different amounts of watered down things like that. So brush strokes and watered down paint in the next video. So look forward to that, and we'll see you guys next time. If you like our material, if you like our videos, please feel free to support us on Patreon. You can like, share, and do all the regular YouTube stuff as well. And we'll see you guys next time. Thanks, Internet.